Hello, everybody, and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Welcome to the show today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the illusion of choice. Now, I'm definitely not saying that we don't have a choice because we do, and we can manifest what we want. But it's the illusion or the spell over the masses. And certainly, something I was certainly under that spell for many years, I have to say, and there's no shame in that. It's part of our process. I mean, very, very few people are actually born awake and have really, really, you know, banged the drum from day one, as it were. So yeah, what we're going to be looking at today is the illusion of choice, and the fact that there's only a handful of companies that run this realm currently with their subdivisions, and so we get this illusion. It's the same in politics and everything else that we look at. There is an illusion that we actually have a choice. But on the show today, and this is just an example that I'm going to show on the slideshow of the illusion of that choice and how that illusion of choice is kind of a way of keeping the slavery bonds intact. Now, what do I mean by that? Fundamentally, what I mean by this is if we have a perception that we're free and that we have choices, that enables that perception, that backs up that perception. But in reality, there's very little choice and we're very, very controlled. We're hemmed in. But if you can go, say, let's start a slideshow and I'll explain. So, where are we? Okay. I just need to get, there's a big bar that sits across that, there we go. It's much better. I can see it all now. So yeah, there's fundamentally 12 companies that own 550 plus consumer brands food wise, you know, and we're not talking about small potatoes here, monetary wise. You know, Nestle, 111 billion, um, PepsiCo, 91 billion, Procter and Gamble, 84 billion. Now, this slide's not particularly new. I should imagine it's a lot more because we know that during the COVID and everything else that's been going on, that they've been making money hand over fist, and they've been fundamentally ripping us off. Now, there's 550 brands there owned by a handful of companies, but with all those brands and different makes, that gives us the illusion of choice, and it's an illusion. So today it's just a bit more of a mindfulness of the understanding of, when I go into a supermarket and I see all these shelves, all the stuff, when you actually look at the ingredients, who makes them, and you trace it all back, fundamentally that supermarket that you go into will have no more than 10 or 12 brands worth of goods and sometimes less than that. But the shelves will be full with all different makes and names. So for instance, Nestle, you know, Haagen-Dazs, Nescafe, Nesquik, Perrier, Aero chocolate, Tidy Cats, whatever that is. I mean, some of this stuff is obviously not countrywide, but Buxted Water, and that's just, a small Lion Bar, Kit Kat, just a small example of all the different brands. Coca-Cola. Obviously we have all the drinks, but Costa Coffee is Coca-Cola. Kraft, Heinz, Kraft, HP, Philadelphia, Pepsi, Lay's Crisp, which is Walker's, Doritos, as well as the drinks. But it's interesting that a lot of these big companies, we're not seeing a lot of quality food here, are we? We're not seeing a lot of nutritional value. P&G, Procter and Gamble, Lenore, um, Tampax, Dawn, Bounty, Old Spice, Gillette, Oral-B. Company I used to work for, Unilever. Um, I have to say my experience of working for Unilever was pretty dire. Not a very nice company in any way, shape, or form. The management structure was very, very authoritarian, and they didn't care. I actually also worked for kind of Pepsi Co in a way because I worked for Bridvik, which was had the rights on selling Pepsi in the United Kingdom. But yeah, Unilever, they're the values that they say about, you know, community and everything else is just a joke, just a joke. Um, I actually worked for Coleman's around here, Coleman's Mustard, which was a Norwich company, Coleman's, and we we had old mills that went back to the 1800s, early 1800s. And, we still milled flour, mustard grain from locally sourced, or used to, um, from locally sourced farms. There was a shop in the city, which was a beautiful shop that had specialty mustards and everything else like that. And Unilever shut it down because it wasn't making them any money. And that's what it comes to at the end of the day, it's money. But, you know, but we can hear like Unilever, Ben and Jerry's, Horlicks, Coleman's, obviously, Walls. Very interesting logo on Walls, isn't it? Have you ever looked into what the logo means? Yeah, very nice. So this is just another, just move me down a bit, up a bit. That's about as good as it gets, isn't it? Um, this is another, and fundamentally, there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 companies that own everything, you know. I mean, PepsiCo owning Quaker. Quaker did some pretty foul experiments in the past on children and other people. Worth looking that one up. But we have all these little subsidiaries of what they are. Mars is another big one. Mondial, British Association Food, General Mills, PepsiCo, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Danone. You think you have choice in a supermarket, and yet all of this is owned by ten companies fundamentally. 10 companies own everything that you walk into that supermarket. All have their fingers in every single pie of that. So, yeah, very interesting that have you really got much choice? When you break it down and you go to the top of this pyramid, do you have much choice? We have the illusion of choice. And this is an example. And, this is just an example because when we talk about politics, you know, and all the rest of it, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So when we go into media, 95% of all the media, mainstream media, is owned by, it was six companies. I think it's only five or four now. The Walt Disney Company, Warner Brothers, Viacom, CBS, Comcast, and News Corp. And these companies produce all your choice of viewing. They also control your choice of reading via the papers, and also they control and are part of and connected fully to your viewing from Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Tinder, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat. It's all there. So all of this is controlled by a handful of corporations. So when we're looking at media, food, or politicians, the illusion of choice is really not there. It's a perception. And while that perception maintains within the general sleeping public, they won't question. And what I love about, obviously, the beautiful Femi, you guys and girls, is that you're questioning. And I know most of you will know this already, but sometimes it's worth being reminded of this in a mindful way that 95% of everything you watch is controlled by a handful of people. And let's not beat around the bush on this one as well. I'm on Telegram and I share a lot of stuff on Telegram. And, if you want me to, I'll probably share these slides on Telegram for everybody to have a look at. So you can download them if you want, peruse, do your own research. Um, but is Telegram really free? I don't think so. We have infiltrators, paid infiltrators in Telegram. We see these bot farms. When you're arguing with somebody on Facebook about something or trying to get a point across on Facebook and someone's being stupid, the chances are it's actually not a real person. It's a bot farm. It's a control mechanism paid for and controlled by all of this lot. Now, I'm obviously not going to read this part at the bottom or in the middle, but it's very interesting that every single one of these companies is controlled by, headed by a certain group. Just like your food, it's controlled and headed by the same group. Now, I put this slide together to try and show you the finance. I mean, I talk quite a little bit about finance. Um, I know they're not the most popular of subjects, but I put for me, the three bigger type monetary corporations that we have going through us. Now, let me just pull this down so you can see it. Perfect. So, State Street has 11.5% of the world's assets go through its books per day. Now, we're talking stocks and shares and all the bits and pieces like that. So, every day, 32.6 billion will go through just one company, and that's only 11%. And this is just general stocks. This State Street isn't banking as such, nor is Vanguard, nor is BlackRock. They're asset management companies. That they're not banks as such, even though they hold banking stocks. But this is very interesting, I think, on the global assets of. So Vanguard is a big player, second biggest player in the world, in fact, um, on global assets. and they hold $10.4 trillion dollars in global assets. That's more than some countries' holdings, full stop. But obviously, it's actually larger than that because they hold and are involved in Nvidia and the big bank systems. And so this is what they show officially on their books. But we know the books are played with and they can do whatever they want with because they control the accountants, they can control the system fundamentally. But it's very interesting. Now, BlackRock, the CEO Larry Fink, who has just taken over the co-chairmanship of the World Economic Forum and is already starting to bring in some quite interesting concepts, I believe, about the lack of home ownership and everything else that goes with it. Interesting that BlackRock has been purchasing huge numbers of houses in the United Kingdom and land in America and housing across. It's very interesting, isn't it? But they hold 12.5 trillion in global assets currently. I'm sure it's a lot more than that, but that's the official figure. Now, all these big conglomerates or these corporations headed by a certain religion, again, who are involved in the New World Order system, all link onto and fundamentally report to one bank, the top of the pyramid. That's called the Bank of International Settlements. Now, they only physically really hold 1 trillion. I'm sure it's a lot more than that. So I'll put 1 trillion plus. It's very difficult to get figures from these companies because they just, when you control everything, why would you need to show the money that you actually hold and run? But the Bank of International Settlements is fundamentally the central bank of every single central bank in the world. Now, I'll go into that in a second. So we have the Federal Reserve. So in 2021, the Federal Reserve in the United States held $8.5 trillion dollars. Now, compared to these globalist corporations, that's not a lot. In fact, you could say that Vanguard holds more and BlackRock hold more money than the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve has the ability to print money out of fresh air and create however much money it wants. It's also headed by Jerome Powell. It's very interesting that Jerome Powell holds, because he's the chair of the Federal Reserve, holds a Bank of International Settlements passport. And this passport gives him diplomatic immunity. And he can travel anywhere in the world, particularly to Basel in Switzerland, where the Bank of International Settlements is based. He'll travel there once every couple of months under diplomatic immunity. The Bank of International Settlements is a country in its own right, and it's above the law. And I shall say that again, it's above the law. Now, the Bank of England in 2020 held £8.75 billion. I should imagine it's just short of a trillion or around the trillion mark, isn't it? What's very interesting, the Bank of England is apparently a not a privately owned central bank anymore. It's publicly owned. But interestingly, the governor of the Bank of England still reports to the Bank of International Settlements and still holds a diplomatic passport for the Bank of International Settlements. Now, all central banks apparently hold around $40 trillion plus. Now, currently, I don't think that's correct. I think it's a lot more than that, potentially. But it's very interesting, isn't it? But every single central bank chairman will have a Bank of International Settlements passport and will go to them. And I think some like Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan certainly, and other high-ranking bank CEOs will also hold the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, passports for travel to and from. So there again, we can see a pyramid. How much choice do we really have? Well, there's only really one bank in the world, and everything else is a derivative of. And these companies, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock, just three of the biggest ones, which are not really banks, they're assets, sorry, management systems. They work for fundamentally the banks who work for the Bank of International Settlements, and it's all a spider's web. So there's no choice really. The monetary system is again is a fallacy of choice. There is no choice. It's a fully controlled system, just like the food system is, and just like the media is. And below is BlackRock, a little slide, and just kind of shows you where their fingers are in the pies of. Obviously we've got Bank of America there, that Bank of America Corporation. Strange, it's two called the same. I wonder which one you're under, some of you in America. But Walmart, Pfizer, Facebook, even good old Tesla, Visa, Uber, Honeywell, Fox News, CNN. BlackRock holds major amounts of shares in that and will have a major influence, as would Vanguard and State Street, in direction of what's going. It's very interesting, again, that all of those involved in these companies and the banks fundamentally are of the same religion as well. Now, I can't show you any more of the slides I've done um, because they're not for YouTube. I've got about 60 more slides, and at some point I shall do those, but I can't show you them. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop because the slides start to show things that I could get in trouble for on YouTube. So, because as we just saw, hello back, as we just saw on the control mechanism, YouTube is fundamentally controlled by the media companies who control everything else. On my Telegram group, I'll put some pyramid um, drawings up, or depictions, which show kind of the control mechanism if you're interested. So my Telegram channel's Alternative Interactions. It's free to join. There's no strings. You just pop on, and I'll have some images there that I'll show you that I can share on there. So yeah, getting back to the perception of freedom of choice. We've looked at food, we looked at media, and kind of looked at very briefly banking because it's very complex, but the principles are all the same. It's exactly the same for politics. Many parasites, many ticks, many insects that feed off your blood. Politics is exactly the same. I don't believe there's any single leader in probably a good 100 years who has not been selected by the companies or those that those companies report to lead the illusion of choice. So certainly in the UK, we've had many, many prime ministers in the recent times that weren't actually elected by anybody. One or two of them were then elected later, but generally people are put in. So if we take Keir Starling, for instance, and the British PM, and remember what I'm now going to be talking about is a story, it's not factual, and any any coincidences to the real people is just purely coincidence, and there's nothing to see here. Isn't it strange that you have to say these kind of things while you're in the UK so you don't get arrested? Because free speech really works in the UK. Hmm. Um, yeah, what we have is if we take a guy called Queer Starling, he um, was a member of the Trilateral Commission and also a member of the Fabian Group. And when a barrister, I believe, or legal in this case, it's just a story, remember, and was involved in some very high profile cases that came across that they didn't get prosecuted for some reason. And certain individuals seem to be let off. And when we look at the Trilateral Commission and the Fabian Group and also the World Economic Forum, we start to see very interesting pattern emerging. And that person was obviously placed in the position they were, made sure that they became a leader of a party, and were then put in charge. So, was there really any choice by the people? Did the people really have any real effect? Were the people aware of his past and what he had done? Or was all of that hidden by the control mechanism of the media? We have a perception, or the people often have a perception that they're free. Now, I know I'm free in my head, and I know I am free, and nothing can stop that. And even if they physically incarcerated me, I'd still be free because I've broken those chains and I see it for what it is. And this is what this is about. This is about seeing stuff for what it is and being mindful of the perception and the illusion of freedom or choice. Now, Rich and I did a show Sunday. I think it's Rock and Band Pandora's Box 28. Very interesting, where we were talking about or got onto the Wizard of Oz and the curtain being pulled back. Well, I'm just pulling the curtain back a little bit here. I'm being Toto the dog. I'm just pulling the curtain back a little bit and reminding us of the illusion of choice and how they try and limit fundamentally our choices. You can go into a shop for crisps, for instance, or potato chips, whatever you call them in your country, and there'll be loads and loads of choice. But when you actually look at the amount of companies that make them, it's probably two or three factories, and it's all the same company, and they all come from the same company. So you get all the shininess, but none of the actual real choice. You know, you might have one or two smaller independent hand-cooked potato providers, but they will also be owned by fundamentally the same companies because the banks will be involved or Vanguard, BlackRock, or whoever. If they're big enough, their shares will be traded on the stock market and those shares will be purchased by a group of different corporations that on block will control that organization in a hidden hand way. So, yeah, very interesting about the illusion of choice that they give us. That they give us. But when you see all this and you pull the curtain back and you can see the Emperor's got no clothes and you can see exactly what's going on, this is fine because what we're doing is it's an awareness of looking at stuff with fresh eyes and understanding the game. And we then have the choice on how far we want to go into that game because we're not sucked into that game. We're not a passenger in that car anymore. We're actually driving that car, and we have the consciousness of choice in the understanding of the lack of choice of the illusion of the spell of them. So something slightly different today, but I think we all need reminding sometimes of what they do and how they create this spider's web of entrapment around us. And when you see the spider's web, you can avoid it, you can step over it, step through it, because we are truly free and we're about to bring that freedom in. So remember, good time at the moment to manifest what we want. Brilliant time to manifest the future you want. Don't focus on the lack and don't focus on the spider's web of control. Look at what it is and then focus on something where they're not in power anymore. They have no power. Where we are going forward into the realm that we want, creating the kind of food, kind of world full of love, light, and blessings. Beautiful. So, with that, I'll let you go. I'll catch up with you very soon. Bye bye, everyone.